All right, folks, it's Tony Thornton again here with Donnie Platt, and welcome to the Mound Visit. This is our third episode. The Mound Visit is presented by Top Prospect Sports, and we are very appreciative for you tuning in tonight. So tonight, Donnie and I have a great guest once again. But before we get to tonight's guest and other things, last week we had a great call, Donnie, with two softball coaches, bright future in the business, and they had some great information.
Yeah, it was neat to hear some stories from some young coaches that had just transitioned, I think, into their very first couple seasons as coaches right out of college, with great stories, success stories through college, and wonderful information on how athletes can interact with coaches during today's quarantine, and then even outside of that when it comes to recruiting, and what's the best process. I know they talked about getting emails and videos and what's actually working for them. That was great to hear what the inside scoop on what the recruiting coordinators are looking for.
Yeah, so I'll definitely look back on that. I know Sarah had a few things that she said, like, you got to be seen. You got to get out there, put yourself out there, and make sure that, if you want to go to that next level, you got to invest in yourself.
Absolutely. Understand yourself, educate yourself, invest in yourself, know where you want to go, and go figure out where those coaches are. I know that was a big thing, and understanding. And I know for myself, looking at the Division II level for baseball and all that, a lot of it is those coaches understanding how far they can go in their recruiting, where they're going to be, and going and getting in front of them. So understand how the process works, educate yourself on the NCAA rules, which both of the coaches last week were very knowledgeable in the NCAA rules, and I know that will help parents a ton listen to the information that they had to offer about that.
Yeah, so I think tonight we're going to follow up with another great Zoom cast. The guy that we got coming on tonight is going to bring some good information. And before we introduce him, let's talk about our social media. We're at Top Prospects TF. Sometimes I do a little tongue twister with that, but we're at Top Prospects TF. On Twitter, on IG. Blow it up. We're just looking for good feedback from or any kind of feedback from the audience. We're trying to make these shows informational, so Donnie and I can bring you what you want to hear, what you'd like to hear, what kind of questions you may want to hear. But that's what we're trying to do. So blow us up on Instagram, Twitter, Top Prospects TF. So without any further ado, I'm probably going to let our guest in, and then we'll get talking. So tonight's guest is from the University of Charleston. He is the assistant coach and the recruiting coordinator. His name is Ian MacDonald. Welcome to the show, Ian.
Tony, thanks so much for having me on. I'm really looking forward to spending some time with you here tonight.
Well, I feel the same way, and I know my cohort here, Donnie, he feels the same way. He's ready to get going. He's a pitching guy, so I know he's got plenty of questions to ask you, so I know this is going to be a great call. So with that being said, Ian, tell our audience a little bit about yourself. Give them a little bit of background on Mr. MacDonald.
Yeah, for sure. So I was born and raised Central Pennsylvania. Unbelievable mom and dad, older brother, older sister. So grew up in Central PA, just outside Harrisburg. Had a chance to play for some really good coaches, and I think playing for those guys, helped me, I guess, push me to fall in love with the game. And I played college baseball at Geneva College. It's a private D3 school, about 45 minutes outside of Pittsburgh. So spent 4 years there as a Golden Tornado, had a great experience, and spent a few years in Pittsburgh thereafter. Got a taste of what corporate America felt like, and figured out real quick it wasn't for me, and was super fortunate. I got involved with the travel baseball organization up there, and worked from a part-time coach into a full-time position, just doing private instruction and then doing operations within the travel baseball organization. So when I was serving on staff at Steel City Select, I was fortunate. I got a chance to volunteer up at Grove City College, which is a D3. Matt Royer, one of the best baseball minds I've been around, and got a chance to work alongside Kyle Sasala, which to date, he's one of the best recruiting guys I've had a chance to build relationships with. So learned a lot there. And then I was fortunate, Tony, I got a chance to join Charleston here in this past January. So almost a year and a half now here in the maroon and gold. And I've had a great experience, learned so much. I had a chance to work under Andrew Wright and obviously Robbie Britt now, and he's hit the ground running. Two unbelievable bosses that I'm super fortunate to have the chance to work for early in my career.
Well, that's great, man. I mean, whenever I heard that you were transitioning from, the travel side to college, I thought it was a great fit, because when I first met you, it was through the Steel City Select organization. And I could just tell from the beginning you had a lot to offer. So I'm not trying to blow your head up or anything, but it just, it's just one of those things that when you meet someone, that their ambitions are just a little bit beyond maybe where they're at. Not that it's anything is wrong with that, but they're always looking for something better. So a couple of questions I do have to start off with before Donnie jumps in is that I see that you tapped into the on-base U as part of your certification. Tell me a little bit about that, why you chose the on-base U organization.
Yeah, for sure, Tony. So on-base U is an extension of the Titleist Performance Institute, or TPI, based out of California. So they got their start in basically just studying golfers, obviously a rotational sport. And since then, they branched out into a number of different sports. So now they work with clients in tennis, and they work with clients in baseball and softball. And obviously golf is what's grown the organization and the company. So On-Base U is a baseball-specific certification for coaches and health professionals. And it's kind of a process of screenings, and it's an educational seminar over the course of 2 days where, you learn more about how to assess an athlete when you first meet them, and you learn how specifically, what specifically they're capable of doing from a movement standpoint. So, before you even begin making recommendations of try this, do this, I think it's really important. You need to understand how they move and how they're capable of moving. And then obviously working backwards and making recommendations for maybe things they can do better as part of the swing or part of the delivery.
So, Ian, where would you recommend for some of the younger coaches listening to fit On-Base U if they're looking into their sort of educational resources? So is that something they're just getting into coaching they should step into, or is there maybe another platform before they get to On-Base U that they should look into?
Yeah, for sure. They have great, unbelievable resources for coaches of all levels. From what I experienced, Donnie, when I was there, a majority were actually at the professional level. So they had like trainers and coaches and, anything for pitching coaches and physical therapists. And I was definitely one of the youngest, probably dumbest in the room. And I learned so much. So, it's definitely more of an advanced certification. I know even most of the people certified are college coaches or at the professional level. So I think if they were just getting starting out, maybe they'd obviously begin to familiarize themselves with some of the elements of the screening process and maybe learn a little bit about TPI, but I'm not sure that'd be the best place to start if you were just starting out in coaching.
Yeah, so I was intrigued when I saw that you had got that certification, because I have seen a lot of that on social media. I know a lot of people that, like you said, that are up in the professional ranks are moving towards learning how the body moves and certain things. They do a lot with the hitting. So it seems like it's been a great certification for a lot of guys that are jumping in and trying to learn how the body moves.
Yeah, absolutely. I learned so much. And actually just a few weeks ago, I went for just the general TPI certification as well. Just try to connect the dots between, obviously I learned baseball specific movement screens, and then just, how the pitching delivery works from biomechanics. And I don't want to get too scientific on the podcast, right? But with TPI, it just kind of took it to a next level. And it just gave me a broader understanding of, the kinetic sequencing, and I found it really to be valuable. So they do an unbelievable job. Dr. Greg Rose is the one who heads it up, and I can't recommend it enough for obviously coaches that are specifically interested in how the body moves and how it's capable of moving.
Yeah.
I think one of the keys in those programs a lot of times is that ability for them to communicate and understand how people learn and how people teach. Did you find success with their platform with that ability of them to communicate the knowledge that they're gathering?
Yeah. They found an unbelievable way, Donnie, to take super complex, ideas and subjects and bring it down to like square one. So half of the seminar was specific to just human movement in the body, and the other half was specific to pitching, right? So you had medical professionals where the pitching side was over their head, brand new. Then you had the pitching coaches, like myself in college baseball, where, they're talking about, I guess, the biomechanics, and that was just so over my head, right? So, but they did an unbelievable job of, it's when you first get into it, you're just like, how am I ever going to learn about this? This is overwhelming. But, the more you're in it, the more you're around it, I think the more and more you pick up. And the support that you receive from the events, it's second to none. I can't recommend it enough.
Well, how have you combined all of that information with the years of experience and, for lack of a better term, but the term that everyone will understand it, is feel? You know what I mean? All of that you maybe have thought was true, but it's just what you feel, everything you see, what your gut tells you. How have you combined that with what you learned from TPI, from On Base U, and other sort of the scientific side of it?
Sure. I think what's great about the TPI and On Base U, Donnie, is it gives you a head start, right? So, you screen these guys before you even have the chance to work with him. And then almost, basically, when you start familiarizing yourself with the concepts, you can see how a player moves and almost guess what the pitching delivery is going to look like, right? So, if I know a young man has significant limitations in his right hip and he's a right-handed pitcher, I probably know as soon as that front foot lifts, he's just going to be falling forward because he can't get into the back hip, right? So I think it just increases the awareness of things to look for as part of the pitching delivery, and it just gives you a head start where, knowing how his body moves and maybe knowing where he has limitations or things that potentially could impact the pitching delivery, then obviously once you know how the body moves and what it's capable of, I think you just obviously see the pitching delivery, then kind of reverse engineer of, what can I do to help that guy move better, and then ultimately have a better delivery.
Talking about pitching, that sounds like, I know it's right up Donnie's alley, but with you, Coach, now, is this something that, I know you do a lot of recruiting, and we're going to get into that as well. Now, are you hands-on with the pitching, or is this someone else on the staff is at their duties?
Yeah, so we're really fortunate, Tony. We have a pitching coach and a hitting coach. I think kind of the pitching development's almost for me, it's kind of a secondary responsibility, right? For me, the major thing is recruiting, but I'm super fortunate. I get the chance to work hand in hand with Anthony Zona, who's our pitching coach, and he's unbelievable. And he's a younger guy, just like myself, and just a great communicator and teacher of pitching. So him and I kind of tag team things, and we have a third guy on staff that works specifically with our pitchers, Isaac Bowden, and he's a great young coach. So kind of the three of us, it's almost where Coach Zona is almost a pitching coordinator, and myself and Isaac, we're almost pitching coaches underneath. And I think we're learning the importance real fast of, okay, if you're going to have three coaches on staff, we need to be on the same page, right? Of this is how every single guy moves. This is specifically the 2 or 3 things that we're working on with every single pitcher, so that, collectively as a group, right, we're speaking in the same language. And I'm not talking to him about his stride, and Anthony's not talking about his arm action, and Isaac's not talking about his knee lift, and we're not overwhelming him, right? But maybe we can all address the same 1 or 2 things, and maybe we can just make it a little more simple if we're all speaking the same language. So there's 3 coaches on staff that work with pitchers, and Anthony, he's kind of the coordinator, the guy that leads the efforts, and he does an unbelievable job with that.
A ton of inside coaching information there. If you're paying attention, had any experience in sort of the higher level coaching world, which I really appreciate that insight. And I know, Ian, where do you fit in on the coaching staff in terms of experience? And I know bringing in some of the science and the new school stuff, was that a easy transition for you into the coaching staff? I mean, the culture that you've talked about already sounds like, communication is key. And I know understanding and speaking the same language is huge, so how did you guys establish that as a coaching staff? Sure.
So a little background on our staff, Donnie, we have 8 people on staff, which is unique, obviously at the collegiate level. And in a way, I love coaching at Division II because you can have more help as compared to some of the restrictions and limitations that Division I has on it. I think that our staff as a whole, I'm 26 years old. Our head coach is 27, and the oldest guy on staff is 29. So across the board, we are extremely young. We're fortunate, Andrew Wright and what he did here in 4 years was unbelievable. I mean, he completely turned around the program, and even from them touching on the data and analytics and technology, Donnie, I mean, he introduced that. And I like to think as a staff, our coaches are just, I think we're getting better and better at using technology, right? And I think initially, like, every staff goes through it where you get it and you want to use it all the time and do this and that and that. But, I think technology is only as good as, the information you can pull out of it. And then not only the information, but then what recommendations you can make your players, right? So, I mean, if they're just looking at spreadsheets of data, I don't think that's going to help. But I think where we've really developed most is our director of player development, Al Porterfield. He's kind of he's the one that collects all the data and then works hand in hand with our pitching coach and hitting coach. And he's just kind of the middleman between it. And he does an unbelievable job almost filtering it and pulling it out. And, he's interned with the Tampa Bay Rays and the Los Angeles Dodgers and Seattle Mariners. So essentially he's bringing basically 3 different internship experiences to what we're doing at the Division II level. So I think we're getting better and better with it. Obviously the more and more technology that's coming out, but for us, I mean, technology and data and analytics and all the other buzzwords you want to use, it's prevalent, I think, within our, player development efforts. And I think it goes back to, we want to be able to prove what we think, right? So if I think this guy's, curveball is electric, but then numbers tell me otherwise, well, odds are, like, there's going to be there's going to be something wrong. If I think it's unbelievable and the numbers are like, this is such an average pitch, maybe the Rapsodo's off, or maybe like my eyes, it's like something's deceiving me, right? But I think what data can do most times is kind of affirm what it is that you think can be true. And I think obviously, within player development, it can serve as, these are specific measurables maybe we're trying to increase. So technology is a big part of it. It's something we love and it's something we use on a regular basis, but I think it's something that we're gradually getting better and better and better as far as how we're using the technology that we have.
So you mentioned Rapsodo. What other technology are you using, and what are you guys doing to take that information and make it coachable?
Yeah. So from a pitching side, Donnie, I mean, we have Rapsodo, and then obviously we have a fleet of Stalker radar guns. I think pitching wise, we're a little bit behind on the technology side as compared to hitting. Hitting, we have a Rapsodo unit for our hitters. Every single one of our hitters receives a blast motion sensor. So for maybe your listeners unfamiliar, basically blast motion tells you all the swing characteristics leading up to contact, and Rapsodo basically tells you what's happening after contact, right? So we compare that data that we collect together to get a complete picture of maybe swing by swing, what is that hitter doing? And then we actually invested in a virtual reality pitch recognition system. We just got that in January, and I feel like we were just making developments as far as we were creating individualized plans for our guys based off pitch recognition wise. Maybe one guy can recognize that curveball really fast. Another guy, maybe he struggles with just identifying, fastball command to his inside, right? And we've been able to identify that based off reaction times. And I think we're really going to leverage and use that even more than we ever have before next fall. So from a technology side, that's what we use. I think when you ask how do you make it more applicable, I think something that I stay out of Coach Blatchford's way on the hitting side. He does an unbelievable job, but on the pitching side, I think we're being a little bit more selective, and we're being a little more cautious of how much information we give our guys. And it's not to hide it, and it's not to deceive them. But I think, for us, it's how can we take a really complex data set and make one simple recommendation or 2 simple recommendations from that. And I think that goes in with how Porty communicates with our hitting coach, Blatch, and our pitching coach, Coach Zona. And I just think that's so important. I think we're getting to a point where we're understanding the data that we're collecting better than we ever have before. And I think as we're gaining understanding, we're able to take really complex ideas and simplify it for our players. And I think that's our goal as far as how do we make that applicable in player development.
So a lot of it's sort of that one of the coaching tools we use is just trimming away or uncoaching, keeping those blinders on for them. And before we get too far, I've heard some awesome things about those virtual pitch recognition systems. Can you spill the beans on all that and what that is and what for, I know those things, they get me super excited. I know a lot of people haven't even heard of what that is or what those are. And vision training is even barely scraping the surface of that concept. But could you tell us whatever it is we should know about that tool?
Yeah, for sure. So I think the best way I can describe it, especially when recruits, we're talking to them on the phone or we have them on campus, is, just think of like those VR headsets that people have for video games. And imagine that's on your head, but then you're looking out and you're in a stadium and you have a pitcher on the mound that, like, depth wise, it looks like he's 60 feet, 6 inches away. And then from there, we can do so many different programming techniques. So we can do where basically they're just pushing if it's a ball or strike, right? And we can work on specific pitch recognition. Then other times we're actually working on timing, and pretty much you're clicking a button as soon as you would start that swing, and it would tell you, I guess, how on time you are. So there's a number of different things that you can do with it. I think we're just scraping the surface as far as how we're using it. And we got it in January. So we introduced it to our guys, but basically, 6 weeks later when the season started, we were just focusing on, putting the ball in play, spraying it to all fields in game, right? That was kind of the focus. And I think even on the tech side, maybe that's something to point out, Donnie, is that, during the fall, especially, this fall, we're going to be scrimmaging pretty much our entire fall set practice segment. And I think for us, and even going back to the screening, I think this is going to really just serve as an evaluation period, right? And it's figuring out what the guys are good at, maybe areas that we need to get them to improve. And, I think we're going to incorporate the mobility, and we're going to incorporate the player development, and we're going to incorporate the technology all in one to give us a big picture of, okay, this is where this guy's at, and then what do we need to do to help him improve, and help him ultimately with a goal with, can we help him be better in the game, right? And that's what all this culminates into, is on-field performance. Are we helping him out? So that's kind of a long-winded answer, your response, Donnie, of I guess, the VR pitch recognition system. But I think we're scratching the surface, and we're going to use it more and more and more in years to come.
It's fascinated me a ton because, I know I think when I was in high school, and I graduated high school in 2007, visualization was one of the big buzzwords, right? And I was taught that, your brain has a hard time telling the difference between, if you're truly visualizing something and actually doing it, if it has a hard time telling the difference. So I can only imagine what this virtual reality can do. And I've heard of them being able, if you want to face Clayton Kershaw's curveball in the bottom of the ninth with a full count, you can do it 1,000,001 times, so the situations and the possibilities of that game style and that situation specific training, absolutely, it blows the roof off of the capabilities there.
Absolutely. As a pitching guy, it's like, as long as that's helping our guys score more runs, that's what we care about on the
right. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So go ahead, Donnie. Go ahead, bud.
No, go ahead. I'm the technology side of things. I know we could talk a ton about those, but I think I don't have too many more questions on that. And I'm really interested to hear a little bit. I know sometimes coaches don't like to talk about themselves too much, but I'd love to hear about Ian's playing days and how that's influenced them. So if you don't have much on the technology, which I know you have the hit tracks and everything, so I'm sure you have some comments on technology as well.
No, I agree with Coach, and I don't know if you're talking to me or if you're talking to Ian, but I know we have.
I just talk.
We have hit tracks here at TP, and like you said, it's only as good as how you can pull that information out and use it and give your athlete the best information on how to help them improve. So, obviously things are a little different than whenever I played. I'm a little bit older than you two young cats, but it's awesome to have that stuff and have the bells and the whistles, but it still comes down to coaching. You still got to translate the information, because if not, then it's just something there that kids can get lost. So like you said, Coach, you're not going to give them every piece of information, give them every category that you're observing, but you're giving them what they need. So when they're out there on the mound, that they're just, they have a good visual and their mental is in a good place.
Absolutely. 100%.
So before I ask Ian you some questions, one last piece that maybe we didn't quite touch on. Are there any tools that you're using for the mental side of the game? I know Tony mentioned that, but do you have apps or any tools that you recommend or that your players are using to, better the mental side, whether it's on field, off field, or anything?
Yeah, so I think a testament to Robbie, and obviously he's only been here. I mean, this was his first season, so we joke all the time. We're like, holy cow, man, this is year number one and shortened due to a pandemic that hasn't happened in 100 years. And, if there was a head coaching school, this definitely wouldn't be a subject on how to deal with this. But I think from a mental side of the game, he's done a great job incorporating that into what our guys do. I think a couple ways that we're teaching the mental game is before practice, every single practice, we take basically 5 to 10 minutes of quiet time meditation. And we just call it quiet time and breathing, so some guys are freaked out by the meditation side, but I mean, for us, it's not, I mean, that's how we start practice. It's not like you can just be there if you want. If you're late to breathing, you don't practice, plain and simple. So, the breathing part, and then I think it's teaching them how to breathe and what it's supposed to look like. So, they've been introduced to the basic breathing techniques. And I think that's, it's something we haven't really done a lot of in our program until this year, but I think it's almost freeing in a way. And guys can be, even if they're more conscious of when their heart rate's speeding up, when they're short of breath, I think so valuable. And then from a mental skill development, in the fall, I mean, we meet in a classroom session regularly. Usually it's 4 days a week, sometimes 5. And, we're talking about what we call life and leadership skills. And obviously it factors into a lot of the mental game. And especially as we got toward Thanksgiving and Christmas, we kind of flipped the switch and specifically talked about components of the game and playing the game that would probably be considered the mental game. And I think it's something where, I think you stress and you emphasize what's important to you. And it's something that we're trying to put into our guys every single day, whether it's a daily breathing and we have thoughts on the practice plan that change day in and day out. But the mental game, teaching the mental game, man, it's so important. And I think, I think now this has served as clarity for me, Donnie, just with, I believed in it. And now just with everything happening and guys going home and being on their lonesome, like, that when you talk about resilience and you talk about perspective, like all the things that we talked in the I guess, concept of the game of baseball, right? I mean, this is real life. This is bigger, and not taking the game for granted. And just the concept after concept that maybe we talked about in classroom session or we talked about after practice, and now they got to live it. So for us, breathing, visualization, just understanding concepts of the mental game, helping them understand how to think, how to control their thoughts, I think is so important. It's something that we really stress and emphasize here at the University of Charleston.
And I emphasize it as well here at Top Prospects. I've got 2 great guys that are getting their PhD in the mental training side of this sport psychology, and that's a lot of stuff that we're trying to get into is just the visualization and the breathing and trying to train our athletes that you can do a lot of physical stuff to get better, but the mental is where it's going to keep you on the field.
Yeah, Ian, I'm glad you mentioned a few things about and breathing specifically. I know Tony has heard me yelling through the facility about breathing, and I teach the younger kids, and I'd be interested to hear your methods to how you teach. When you teach about how to breathe, it's a crazy concept for a lot of people, but man, it was a huge thing. I taught my kids. I call it the traffic light, right? So they get they're checking in. It's more of a self-awareness check-in. You mentioned heart rate and things like that. So that's what they're doing. And how's their heart rate? Are they in red light? Do they need to take that box breathing, session to bring it down to yellow light and then back to green, or what it is? So I'd be interested to hear what methods you're teaching your players at the collegiate level. I know I always like to give my younger players an example of what they can connect it to. So what is it at the collegiate level that specifically that you're teaching these guys?
Yeah, I'll just give you one example, Donnie, from a breathing standpoint. When we do our breathing every single day that we practice, we start off at the basic level where it's just inhale 4, hold for 2, and exhale with 4. So it's just 10-second increments. And we challenge our guys, and we're right there. Our coaches, we breathe alongside them, right? So it's just as challenging for me as it is them. But to just focus on your breathing, right? And literally just focus on having that pattern of 4 seconds in, 2-second hold, 4 seconds out. And literally you might do it 3 times and then your mind races, right? Like you're thinking about, I got to do this at practice. I got to tell this guy this thing. I got to check in with how his exam went. And even for us, like, right, we deal with it. And I think breathing is a learned habit, right? And I think like, if you can just have them concentrate on the most essential task of being a human, which is breathing and oxygen. I think even it goes beyond just calming the heart rate, but it helps them improve their focus, right? And it makes them more aware of when their heart rate is speeding up and when they do need to slow down. Like what you talked about with the red light, green light, yellow light. That's concepts we talk about at the college a lot. I think it might be Brian Kane or whoever it would be, but it's something that I think for every guy it's different, right? And I think even going back to the breathing and visualization and the mental game, some guys, like, they buy into it, right? It's almost freeing that they've learned about it. Other guys are just like, yeah, Bubba, just put me on the mound and pitch, right? And that's okay, right? I think other than starting them off, obviously them being in all the classroom sessions and them breathing at the beginning of practice, we're not going too crazy with it, but I think if we teach them the benefits and they experience the benefits, I think more guys that not really understand the value of what breathing, what visualization, just what, awareness and learning the mental game can do for them.
Talking about awareness, and I know as a coach, I know we can all relate to introducing a new concept and then watching our players develop along that journey, right? And one of the things along with the breathing things I'm definitely going to incorporate some of the things that you've talked about on top of, but one thing I did, and I'd be interested to hear if you've had any experience with, I set a timer for starting with shorter time, 2-3 minutes, building up to 5 minutes at the beginning of practice, where when we're done breathing, I told them just to move. And the only rule that they had was they couldn't do what somebody else was doing. And it was interesting to watch them throughout the weeks when we did it twice a week, finally just be okay with doing cartwheels or laying on the ground or just breathing, doing whatever it is. But if you had anything like that experience from when we teach that super structured breathing and watching them either open up and relax into that, or even something on the other side, like I mentioned, with sort of the movement freedom.
Yeah, maybe that's something we're missing out on, Donnie. I can't say, it's something we do here, but
I got some video, and you'll be very entertained and impressed with what they come up with. So
you got to send that to me, man. I'd love to see it.
Yeah. So we've been talking a little bit about the mental and a couple other things, but I know a lot of people are tuning in, Coach, because your expertise at the University of Charleston is the recruiting coordinator. A lot of guys want to hear from you. A lot of guys want to see you somewhere in the stands or something like that. A guy with the colors of your school, looking at them, because from what I can see, you guys have stepped it up. I've watched some of the stuff that you put on social media. There's a lot of things that you guys have been doing over the last couple of years. So with that, can you tell me the pillars of your program? What kind of athlete or how does it all start? What's the structure?
Absolutely. I think for us, Tony, and I appreciate the kind words, but for us, I think it starts with your ability, right? Like that's what gets you noticed. Whether you send us film or we're at a game and see you, for us, there's thresholds as far as physical levels of ability that you got to meet in order for us to be able to recruit you or offer you a roster spot, scholarship, whatever it is. And then I think after we meet we kind of confirm, okay, this kid can play, right? He meets our standard as far as physical ability. Then you go into makeup and maturity and just character-wise, right? So not only can he play, but then is he going to be a guy where I want to spend 20 hours a week with, right? And I want to invest 4 years of my time with that young man, right? And is he going to represent our university, our program well, not only on campus, but in the community? It goes for us, it goes from physical ability, makeup and maturity. And then for us, kind of third and final piece. And, if it's really shouldn't even be ranked 1, 2, 3, because they're all important. Our guys need to have them, but academics, I mean, it's huge, especially at the Division II level. We are super fortunate. We're fully funded. So we have 9 athletic scholarships. But if I'm recruiting a kid, when we go back to ability, and it's similar levels of ability, similar makeup, but then one kid's a 4.0 and another's a 2.8, plain and simple, I can get that guy with a 4.0 way more money than I can academically than the guy 2.8. So I think academics opens doors. So for us, it's those 3 things together of making sure they kind of meet our expectations as far as physical ability, makeup and maturity, and then they won't be liabilities in the classroom. And then I think after that, it's getting them on campus for a visit, showing them why they should choose the University of Charleston. And I think the most important piece of the entire process for us, Tony, is showing our guys every day why they made the right decision. And I think, like, our players, they're the best recruiters. We get guys on campus visits. How much time can we allocate with Braxton, with Hayden, with those? I mean, they're doing a great job. So I think for us, I think our strength at the University of Charleston is our reputation, not only with our alumni and the players within our program, but then the coaches and the people involved with the players of our program, right? So they're high school coaches, they're travel coaches, they're, hitting instructors, pitching instructors. I think we have a good reputation. So I think that 6th and final piece for us, in our recruiting process, it's probably the most important, right? Because I think, obviously, every coach does it differently at our level. And I think some coaches do it really well as far as the overall experience. Others, maybe things that I wouldn't necessarily agree with. But if you don't do things the right way, eventually you and your program is going to get exposed. But if you do things the right way, I think just kind of, I can't tell you how many guys, like, I think year over year, like if you look at our recruiting class, there's certain organizations where we're getting 2 or 3 guys out of every single year, the same organization. And I think it's for us because their coaches trust us and we trust them. And I think trust between us and the coaches and us, and the players, obviously, and us, I think that's the X factor in recruiting is trust.
So what makes, good, as coaches that coach young players, high school players, how do we know which coaches to trust, which ones not to trust? What you've seen both sides. You've been us, you've been them. You've seen both sides of it. What makes the recruiting coordinators that you've seen, that you've mentioned, that you've learned from, and that people do trust? What makes them different, and what makes you guys different?
Man, that's a great question. I think honesty, not only from us to you, but you to us, right? Like, I think every single area we recruit, and I do a lot of Ohio, Western Pennsylvania, West Virginia, but like there's probably 12 guys where, like, if they call me about a kid, I mean, I'm going to pick up and I'm going to trust their opinion in different levels. I mean, some of them, they're pro scouts within pro organizations. Other one that's high school coaches. Other it's private instructors, but they're guys that you trust because I think it's so easy in recruiting, especially as high school coaches or even us as college coaches, is to tell you guys what you want to hear, right? But I think telling you and the kids what they need to hear, I think is so important, right? I think the experience that the university and the program provides, it probably needs to be the biggest thing, right? Like I want to be a program. We want to create an experience that you have a kid that you send us, and he has an amazing 4 years. And not only does he develop as a baseball player, but he develops as a student and as a person. Well, you're going to be more inclined to send future players my way. So I think for us, like, I think that relationship building, that trust, it doesn't happen overnight, right? It's years of just building relationships. And Andrew, he was an unbelievable relationship builder. Robbie, who we work for now, he's an unbelievable relationship builder. So I think, just building that trust over time is really, I think, the best thing you can do. And I think kind of at the root of trust is honesty. And I think it's honesty both ways is so important in the recruiting process.
In your process, I know earlier you mentioned, actually I jotted it down because I really like the quote, and it's something that I think is a common theme. You mentioned being the dumbest in the room. And I relate this to being being a parent, being a recruit, and as well as being a coach. When was it that you accepted being the dumbest person in the room was something to embrace rather than be afraid of? And I relate that to being a recruit by being able to ask those questions, being able to reach out and be willing to open up and be that, because I know that's a huge thing to set the pride and the ego aside. So when was it? I feel like every coach had that moment where they go, I should surround myself with where I'm the dumbest in the room.
Yeah, I think truthfully for me, Don, it goes back to my parents, and I think just how they raised me, right? You were talking about raising kids, and my dad, he owns his own small business in central Pennsylvania, and so many networking groups and so many books that he read. Just library full of books and resources. And I think, for me, I just realized early on, I think I had some clarity that coaching at the collegiate level is something I want to do. And, for me, maybe I don't necessarily have aspirations to coach at the pro level, but I want to coach in college, right? And I think for me, I gained that clarity early on. And then I think, for me, in order to be successful, I think I quickly realized, man, there's so much about this game, so much about recruiting, so much about coaching, and I don't know. And I need to know that. So, I think there's always going to be a learning curve, right, of just experience. And I think for me, I'm just trying to kind of decrease that time and I guess really just become as experienced as I can, as quick as I can, and understand that it's going to take years and years and years to catch up to maybe some of the guys that have been around the game, right, for years and their whole careers. But, I want to surround myself with the coaches who have been in the game 20, 30, 40 years. I want to surround myself around the scouts who know so much about the game and how to watch baseball. So I think I've just been fortunate to gain that awareness early on of there's so much about this game. There's so much about coaching I don't know. And in a way, I think for me, that motivates me to learn more, just knowing that I will never know everything there is to know about the game, right? But I can always learn more. And just the age of technology and all the information available, I think it's easier now than ever before to learn about the game and learn about coaching.
Yeah, so with that being said, with the COVID-19 and the recruiting, how has this time, what we're going through affected your recruiting, or how are you embracing it, or what, give everybody a little insight or backstage access to what Ian and the University of Charleston are doing at this time with recruiting.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, what we are recruiting, it stayed the same. It stayed constant. We have a certain profile for us of offensively, the kind of athlete that we want to recruit on the mound, the kind of pitcher that we want to recruit. How we are recruiting has definitely changed and evolved. Obviously I've had a chance to build relationships with some great coaches all around the country, every single level. And, we're always talking about, okay, how are things evolving? What can we do to stay one step ahead? And for us, I think it's creating a great amount of opportunity. This time, most years, we're stressed. Maybe we're in the conference tournament, we're playing, right? Whereas now, we've been able to use the last 4 weeks, and I feel like as a program, as a staff, we're more prepared than ever before. That when this thing lifts, we got that list of 64 guys that we want to see within the first 3 weeks of the summer, and it's just going to be game on. It's going to be a sprint. So I think for us, it's not necessarily, this is I guess the bad or, man, I really wish it was different. Like we're trying to create opportunity. Even today, we had a virtual campus visit experience where we had a recruit on FaceTime and, took them around, obviously, all the buildings we could, and we took them to the field and downtown, and, we just did what we can, right? And just trying to create, okay, maybe the recruiting experience it can't be the same in a lot of different ways, but what can we do to even just make the best of the situation, in the time that we're in? So how we're recruiting has definitely changed. What we're recruiting probably hasn't changed. But even just from what you were saying, Tony, or maybe even Donnie, of getting on the radar of college coaches and doing what you can, even just from an opportunity standpoint of the kids, I mean, we got nothing going on, right? We're in quarantine just like anybody
Right.
else. I mean, I'm sometimes I'm getting behind on emails. Now it's like a 5-minute response turnaround time because I'm just sitting at my computer doing other work, right? So I think there's opportunity on both sides. Opportunity as a college coach, opportunity as a high school player, and even opportunity as a coach, whether in high school, right? And it's just using this time to better yourself as a teacher, better yourself as a person, as a leader, so that when this all lifts, you're going to be a better coach, better version of yourself than you've ever been.
Amen. And that's well said. I know we've done a couple of these Zoom casts, and that's a lot of what we're talking about is coming out of this better than what we were when we went in. And I know from a coaching standpoint, there are some things that you didn't have an opportunity to try, but now that you've tried it, now you can make yourself a little better with something you can build upon. And technology has kind of taken us not as far, but further than what we were before because we just didn't utilize the tools that we had. So I like hearing that trying to get better now than what we were when we went into this. So that's something that's huge that we've been talking about over the past couple of weeks. What you got there, Donnie?
Yeah, I mean, I'm interested to hear, Ian, you mentioned, we're all stuck in quarantine right now. So what's, there's some books you're catching up on. What, obviously I'm sure you're spending a ton of time on the baseball, but what are you doing? What are you doing outside of the baseball realm right now, stuck in quarantine to make yourself a little bit of a better person?
Donnie, I probably should have more hobbies. I mean, this thing, it is my hobby. It's my passion. Almost every day I wake up, it feels like it's a hobby, a passion rather than an occupation. I've been doing just a lot of I guess, personal development. And I think it goes back to being the best coach and person I can be so that I can be the best coach I can be and ultimately help the players be the best that they can be. And I think we're using this time as a staff. Like, for example, I mentioned it earlier in the show, but had a chance to get TPI certified 2 weeks ago, which was awesome. And I really made sure to study up, learn as much as I can throughout that process. And I actually just started. It's through Program 15, Jeremy Booth, but essentially it's a scout school course where it's going to be a 6-week segment where I'm basically have the opportunity to learn from the people that ran the MLB Scouting Bureau, and I get a chance to be a better evaluator, right? So that's kind of what I'm up to next. And I actually bought this thing after they were killing my Twitter ads and YouTube ads, but it's called Masterclass. And essentially it's like celebrities, and literally it has anything from Steph Curry teaching free throws, right? Or you got Samuel Jackson teaching acting. And I got done a couple of classes.
What was that called?
It's called Masterclass.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you look up, and once you go to the website once, they got you, man. It's going to be in everything that you, for like 3 weeks, I said no. And eventually I'm like, all right, I give up. I got to get it. So
I've probably already seen it. And I know I've gotten some of those, the free courses, and all that. And then, so.
Yeah, no, I would recommend it, Donnie. And I've done a course with the former FBI lead negotiator, and it was about negotiation and bargaining, and obviously from a scholarshiping standpoint, right, and negotiation just through the recruiting process, really valuable stuff. And I think unrelated, I have an interest just in politics, and I'm not going to go that route on the podcast, but I had a chance to do a course with basically who was a campaign manager for our George W. Bush and the campaign manager for Barack Obama, and they combined together to create a 4-hour course on political campaigns. Okay. So I thought that was super fascinating, and just messaging, the timing of messaging, and obviously we're seeing what will probably be an interesting race unfold in front of us, in the next 12 months or so. So that's been cool to kind of invest in myself into and learn more about.
Well, absolutely. I think it's important for everybody, like you said, to, develop some more hobbies, embrace some new things, and take that as much as we love what we love. And hopefully a lot of us have discovered, that. And a lot of us, I'm sure for right now, it's coaching. But how important it is to step away and avoid that burnout, and remember that there are other things in life, that can help us, improve not only on the field but off the field as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So back on the recruiting side, Coach, do you have like a checklist that you know, that our young guys are listening to, like our eighth graders up to, you know, like seniors in high school? You know, is there like a five check box that you would say to do or should be working on to get to that next level?
Sure. I think, Tony, you know, what we look for in every position is a little bit different. You know, and I think it goes back to my responsibility as a recruiting coordinator is to figure out what Robbie wants, the kind of systems that he want to run, and then obviously go out and try to find guys that fit that mold. You know, I think for us, you know, I mean, like I said, it varies every single position, but we've clearly identified that, you know, this is what we want. And you know, obviously I can send you some detailed resources of specifically how we evaluate catchers, how we evaluate infielders, how we evaluate outfielders. And, you know, maybe that can help you. You know, I think for us, just, I guess you know, the 20,000 foot, like the most basic level, you know, offensively, we're looking for athletes, guys that are well-rounded, maybe guys that can run a little bit, guys that can throw. And I think the number one separating tool is guys that can hit. Plain and simple. You know, for us, we invest our scholarship dollars up the middle. So we're recruiting in large part catchers, middle infielders, and center fielders. And then from there, obviously, if they can hit, they move to the corners. And I think that's what we look for from a position player standpoint. You know, in catchers, the biggest thing we look for is ability to receive. And that's something you're going to do. Over 85% of every single pitch thrown is receive the ball, right? So that's going to be important to us. You know, as far as infielders, you know, pretty much the bat is the one thing we look for at every single position except shortstop. Those guys got a little leeway. We're looking for guys that are slick fielders, looking guys active feet that they can keep underneath of them, quick arm action, you know, strong throw across the infield with little to no hump. You know, that's what we're looking for in outfielders, looking at how that guy reads the ball, right? You know, how quick can he react to balls over his head, left and right? You know, how much confidence does he have on the balls on the ground? So for us, it just varies a little bit. I think overall, though, from an offensive standpoint, defensive standpoint, looking for athletes that can do it all. And then pitchers, you know, I think this just kind of factors in our pitching philosophy of what we look for and what we recruit. But we try to keep it really, really simple. You know, so for us, it's the ability to put the fastball in 4 quadrants. So it's just in, out, up, and down. And for us, it's the ability to have one above average off-speed pitch. So preferably, it's guys that can be able to spin it because we found that if you can't spin it when you come to us, odds are you probably just won't be able to spin it, you know, later on when you're a junior or senior, whatever it is. So we like guys that can spin it. We like fastball command. For us, I think I think our strength as a coaching staff is the ability to teach a changeup. If you have a good one, awesome. You know, we can roll with it. And then I think for us, I guess twofold. You know, I'm confident in our ability to just increase and grow velocity as well. So from the pitching side, that's what we look. Pitcher's ability to move the ball in, out, up, down to 4 quadrants, and ability to throw one above average off-speed pitch, and preferably another one that's maybe just average or slightly below average of what we see at our level.
Ian, you mentioned something that I really want to touch on simply because I've heard different philosophies on. You said you preferred pitchers that can spin it, a curveball, a slider, something along those lines versus a changeup. Is that solely based on the strength of your coaching staff to develop the changeup in a pitcher? And the reason being, I've heard that it's harder to teach the changeup, so coaches would rather see that a player with a changeup, that it takes longer to develop over time than a curveball or a breaking ball. So was that always your philosophy? Are you seeing something in the data that changed that? Is that, you know, what do you see in there from choosing a player that already has a breaking ball over a changeup?
Yeah, no, absolutely. You know, I think for us, just the pitcher's ability to feel the spin, right, and be able to put the breaking ball in the strike zone. You know, we found that our guys just overall, like, you know, they really struggle with that. So then the guys, if we go out recruiting and that thing's coming out of a similar tunnel out of the hand and it's got good shape, it's got good bite, you know, that's something that we value. You know, and I think it does go back to, Donnie, that I'm just confident in Anthony's ability to teach a changeup, and I think for me, I mean, that's how I got out to the splitter at the collegiate level. Like, I was a 2-pitch guy, two-seam fastball, splitter. So Anthony does a great job teaching changeup, myself the splitter, and I think part of it is very few guys are throwing changeups at the high school level, and I think it's
Right.
kind of low-hanging fruit. It's something that we can teach,
Okay.
and we've just found in our experience that we got more success teaching the changeup as compared to teaching that curveball. Maybe I'm sure there's some pitching coaches that can really teach it. Like for example, like if it's kind of complex as far as maybe the guys that can spin it and why they can spin it the way they do. Arm slot plays a role. Flexibility in the wrist plays a role, hand speed, arm speed, those things are all factor in, right? But I think for us, we just look for guys with tighter arm actions that can spin it. And we find that we can usually be successful teaching them a changeup.
Well, and those are the conversations that I love to have. To me, that's how we learn. That's how we develop as coaches, right? I was taught something different, and there's a different philosophy out there. So where's the conversation to help us learn? And that's why I love having those conversations. And especially as a coach who currently has a 13U team and deals with high school players, when I send them your way, one of the things we talked about was trust. And if I can better prepare them for you, I think that probably adds into the trust as well. So if I'm not willing to figure it out what you guys need now versus whatever it was 10 years ago, I'm not doing my due diligence to the athlete, right?
And I think too, every coaching staff's different, right? Like I know, for example, there's pitching coaches I know that are really good at teaching the slider, and that's obviously I'm trying to learn from them, pick their mind, but maybe they just got an eye for it, and they can pick guys that are going to throw sliders, right? So. I think every coaching staff is different. I think the low-hanging fruit, the young level, like I even talked 13U and below, it's teaching those guys how to throw a changeup. I mean, I'm a believer that the changeup is one of the best pitches in baseball. And I know it's fancy, it's old, not fancy, it's old-fashioned, and throwing a slider is sexier than throwing a good changeup. I get it, but I think that the whole essence, and we talk about all the time, is pitching, right? It's your job to disrupt the hitter's timing. And how can you do that? You can do that a number of different ways. You can do that by throwing hard and speed up the hitter, and he's got to move quicker than expected. He's got to make a decision earlier. You can do that by deceptiveness or movement where that hitter doesn't even know where that pitch is going, right? Or he thinks it's going somewhere where it's actually not. You can do that command, effective velocity, something our guys are introduced to. Perry Husband, if any of your listeners want to go on a tangent just with learning, and he's got unbelievable work. So, every pitcher's got a different strength, right? For some of our guys, it is fastball command. For other guys, it is their breaking ball. For other guys, it is a changeup. And I think that's where, as coaches, it's our jobs to go and figure out, okay, what is that pitcher's strength? And then can we help him tailor a game plan for him to be successful, utilizing what it is that he does really well?
So to get a little technical, analyzing what kids do well, and obviously I want to make sure that our kids do a lot of things well, but when, to get a little technical for a little bit, the things that we're teaching at our level, at the 13U level right now, I'm trying to develop. I didn't let my kids learn a changeup. They first had to learn a 3-finger fastball. So for me, that arm speed, you're throwing a fastball, it's just an extra finger up there, and learning, developing a breaking ball. It's okay, throw your fastball, but what happens if you put a little more pressure on your index finger versus your middle finger, and just letting them sort of experiment with that. And it seems to have created some success when we did start talking about developing spin rates and a little extra finger pressure on it. So do you have any recommendations or tools that for the 13U player, the 15, the 16-year-old player, that is the fundamental level of developing a changeup or breaking ball that you need them to have to really take that pitch to the next level, your level?
Sure. I think what you mentioned, Donnie, with just experimentation, I think that's so important, right? Especially a guy that maybe never thrown a changeup before or haven't thrown it since they were in 10U. There's going to be a lot of experimentation. Like, we got to find what feels comfortable. What you're talking about of just starting with 3 fingers on the ball, like, I love that. There's literally guys within our program where we just call them BP fastballs. But say they're 86, 87, and just say, all right, try to throw the ball 76 miles per hour and see what happens. And we'll have a radar gun. And then it's just practicing feel, right? And, like, sure, their body might move a little bit differently, but then I think you can teach the feel, then you can speed up the body a little bit, right? So, like, we'll even start before you even mess with grips, is just say, throw your fastball 10 miles per hour less hard. And, some guys, like, 17 miles per hour less, like 4 miles per hour less. You're like, somewhere between it. But it gets guys, they start to get the feel of, okay, I can do this differently. This is what I need to feel. And I think like that's where I would start if I was coaching. Obviously 10U's, maybe they don't throw very hard, but like 13s. I mean, absolutely. Just say, take something off this. Like that's kind of like, I think the best cue to take something off it. And then obviously have a radar gun and not necessarily doing pull downs and seeing how hard you can throw it. And we do some of that stuff. So I'm not saying it's bad, but use it in a different way and just saying, see how much you can take off. And then maybe make it a game, right? Say, I want you to take 8 miles per hour off this. And just say, okay, you got 10 pitches. How many can you get within 8 miles per hour of your peak fastball or whatever it is? And I think that'd be where I start if I was working with a youth pitcher.
You're talking about fun, Coach, and real quick, I don't mean to switch off the change up. You know, obviously I'm not the pitching guy, so
you're good, man. Hey, we're trying to figure out how to get your hitters out, Tony.
I see that.
Wait, he's still here? He's still here? You stealing our signs or what?
So how do you make, for the cause level, for your guys, how do you make your environment fun, like practice? How do you make your competition competitive and make the guys, have a good time and really get something out of it?
Yeah. I think, for us in practice, Tony, I mean, we focus on teaching and mastering the ordinary skills of the game and executing the fundamentals at a high level. I think sometimes coaches can get so unique, different, mix things up and want to make it fun. And we get that. But I think for us, what fun is dogpiling after you win a regional or super regional and going to the College World Series. And I think for us, fun is executing ordinary at a high level, right? And for us, like our environment in practice, everything's competitive and everything's tracked. So even when we're doing our daily work, what we call it, and our infielders are taking fungos, we have a coach on staff that's tracking every single fungo that's hit. And, say a third baseman comes to us and say, I don't understand why I'm not playing, right? Well, then we can go to that sheet and say, well, this guy, he's running quicker times when we're timing him to first base. He's making less errors in the field and he's barreling more balls. So that's why. And that goes back to objective and data, right? And I think that's where it can really be used. It objectifies things.
Absolutely.
But I think for us, what we try to do, Tony, as far as how we make things competitive, let's say we got 3 third basemen. It's not about you competing against number 1. It's not about you competing against number 2. It's about you competing against you, right? Or maybe I'm working with a pitcher and you got a guy that just, like, to be real, right? He's number 17, 18th in the depth chart. I'm not going to have him compete against number 1. I'm having him compete against himself, right? So depending on what the objective is that we want for every guy, maybe for you, you're going to compete against your best, right? You're going to compete against fastball command. Am I going to be better to my arm side, right? And that could be your objective. And we're tracking, okay, how many of the pitches thrown on the inner half, how many are strikes, how many are balls, right? You're competing against your best. So I think that's how we channel competition of we're tracking as a team 100%. But I think it goes back to developing individuals, getting them to understand that all I can control is me getting better. And I want to, every single practice I come on, we got 1% better, just a little bit, incrementally, marginally. And eventually that's going to take me to where I want to go. So it's getting guys internalized where it's them against them, maybe not necessarily them against others. But then obviously supporting each other, in their personal growth of wanting to be better baseball players, wanting to be better people.
Coach, I mean, every one of these Zooms, I get a little giggly over something like that because it's awesome stuff. I mean, you said execute the ordinary at a high level. I mean, like that's pretty simple, but that's awesome. Those are words that you can say to a high school or to a young athlete. Just doing the ordinary and taking it to that next level and making it look easy. I guess that's what we're trying to get to, right?
No, 100%. And I think, like, looking back to our success this year, Tony, and it was shortened, unfortunately. I would have killed to see how this season would have gone. But, fielding percentage was the best we've had in years. And I think part of it is really fortunate facilities-wise. We're playing on a brand-new turf field. That's absolutely part of it, right? But, I think we just kind of, like, in the fall, we just went back to it where it's like there's all these distractions, there's all this tech, there's all this develop, personally. But, I think we have to present to our players how that fits, how you developing personally and individually fits in the team concept. I think that's always the challenge, right? But I think mastering the fundamental skills of the game, it's plain and simple. Hitters hit the ball hard, pitchers throw strikes, defense make the plays, and base runners make good aggressive decisions on the base paths, period. If you do those things really well, you got a chance to win a hell of a lot of baseball games. And I think that's what we're teaching our guys and reiterating with our guys day in, day out.
Yeah, that's awesome, man, because that's a lot of things that when you get into coaching, and, put it on the other side as a hitter, during the game, obviously you're not going to try to tell him eight things that you would tell him in the batting cage in practice. You want him to be able to execute and be able to think what I'm trying to say is how to simplify it. When you're playing the game, it's got to be somewhat simple. Then when we get off the field, we can be a little bit more technical and work on mechanical stuff.
Absolutely. And I think it goes back to, I think the training environment as a whole, we want to speed things up, right? But I think sometimes coaches speed things up too much or make it too ungame-like in an effort to make it game-like, and that's when it detracts it, right? But I think for us, it's doing the ordinary consistently at a high level. And I think if we do those things really well, the team's got a chance to be successful.
Well, they go into the games with a ton of confidence with the amount of preparation that they go through, right? I mean, you're touching every aspect of the game that you could possibly touch on. And as a player, I know it sounds like if I'm in that system, if I'm not confident going into a game, it's probably something more on me, not being able to communicate with the coaches or something along those lines, or being stubborn or not buying in or whatever it is. When you guys are so open and honest, put all the time in and effort and energy into that preparation, it's got to be a wonderful feeling as a player to know that you did everything you could, and that confidence you take onto the field with that is the next level.
No, absolutely. I mean, that's what we're trying to create for our guys, right? I think preparation instills confidence, whether it's on the field or even in the classroom, right? Like if you're going in for a final exam and you didn't prepare well, you're probably not going to do well, and you're not going to be confident in your ability to perform, right? But it's just, I think our guys understand the better they prepare, and that's not just baseball, but that's in every single area of their lives. I think, man, that's so important for them to realize as early on as possible.
Yeah, that's some awesome stuff. Coach, it's been great spending this time with you, and, we're just going to transition into, do you have any parting words or any kind of information that you want the folks that are listening or watching that they can take with them?
Yeah, I would just say this, speaking specifically to the kids that you guys work with or the high school kid, it's, it's kind of uncharted territory, right? No one's been through this before, but I think it's going back to what we preach to our guys in every other area of their lives, and that's controlling what you can control, right? Working to be the best you can be with the resources you have and the people around you. And I think this is a time where some people will fall behind. Other people will use the extra time that they have to not only develop themselves as a baseball player, but as a person. And I think we're going to see after this all clears of you either got better or you got worse, right? You don't want to be the latter of those two. You want to get better. And, so invest in yourself, obviously take ownership of your attitude and behavior. And I think you're going to come out of this thing whenever it does end and whenever it does clear with no regrets, no reservations, with confidence that you did everything you can to be the best that you can be.
Yeah, that's great. That's well said. Don, you got anything to add?
Oh, no, I'm going to let the people just absorb that. That's good stuff right there. So, Ian, I really appreciate it. I know I absolutely plan on touching base with you and spending many, many more hours of discussion on some of the things we talked about. I really appreciate your time, the knowledge, the information, and the ability to communicate that information to us.
I appreciate it, Donnie and Tony, and thanks so much for having me on. I really appreciated the invitation from you guys, and you guys are doing great things up there in Morgantown, Mountaineer Nation, and looking forward to visiting you guys here soon.
Yeah, you
Absolutely.
always have an invitation, man. You can come in and hang out anytime, man. I'll do my best to make that a good time for you.
My man, I appreciate it.
Okay, and God bless, man, and good luck. And if you need anything, let me know.
Appreciate you, Tony.
Thanks, Coach. See ya.